In our fiqh council, the Assembly of Muslim Jurists of America, AMJA, in which I'm a member, and its resident fatwa committee, we have received a lot of questions related to this pandemic. The first question, is it permissible for me to prepay zakatul mal? Can I prepay zakatul mal if the month of Ramadan is my zakah month, is my due date for zakah, and I feel, I see, I hear the need of my community, whether here in the US or even overseas, my extended family members and my relatives and my friends and my colleagues all over the world are struggling from the consequence of the pandemic. Can I prepay zakat al-mal? The answer is the Prophet ﷺ has asked his uncle Al-Abbas ibn Abdul Muttalib to prepay zakat al-mal, and he did actually paid it 2 years in advance. He paid it 2 years in advance. So to answer the question, yes, of course. Whenever you feel that there is a need for you to prepay zakat al-mal before its mature day or before its due date or its maturity, you can definitely do that. If you know, for example, that your zakah every year is around $5,000, for example, and you paid 5,000 plus, like more than 5,000, then in the month of Ramadan, you do not have to calculate your zakah because you are on the safe side. You already have paid more than what you're supposed to pay. If you paid less than 5,000 in our example, then definitely you need to calculate zakat al-mal to make sure that you paid what you're supposed to pay. If you found out that you paid less, then you need to pay the extra. If you found out that you paid more, then you have two options, either to give yourself credit for the zakah of the next year, or otherwise to consider this amount as a sadaqah or an optional donation, not as zakat al-mal. Second question, can I hold my zakah? Can I refrain from paying zakat al-mal if I need that, if I feel that I might be personally in need for my money? Should I really care about others more than myself, or I can take care of myself first? The answer is, it has been authentically reported that during the lifetime of Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu, when he was a Khalifa, it did happen that the zakah payers at a certain point asked him to hold on the zakah and not to pay it. Apparently there was a legitimate reason, but the narration itself did not show clearly what kind of reason was behind this inquiry or request of the Muslim community. Could be a pandemic, it could be natural disaster, it could be drought, it could be Allahu Alam. And actually Umar ibn al-Khattab did allow zakah payers not to pay their zakah for that particular year. When we say that yes, you can refrain from paying zakat al-mal, it does not mean that you are waived from paying it. Rather, you are rescheduling your zakat till next year. So if you pay around $5,000 every year zakat al-mal, and you skipped your zakah for this year for whatever legitimate reason might be, it means that you have to pay $10,000 next year. So it builds up, it accumulates. By the way, here in the US, there is a similar system called the forbearance. Like if you are involved in a mortgage, for example, and you went through some financial difficulties, you apply for forbearance program. Upon the approval, you will be waived or excused from paying your mortgage for maybe 3 or 4, 6 months, more or less. Toward the end of the forbearance period, you are supposed to pay the full amount of the 6 months that you did not pay. Third question that we have received is regarding the permissibility of paying zakatul fitr in cash instead of paying it in kind. The default rule is that أمر رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم زكاة الفطر أن تخرج صاعا من تمر أو صاعا من بر. Default rule is that zakat al-fitr has to be paid in kind from the most popular or relevant, I would say, food for that particular community. Could be date fruit, could be sugar, it could be rice, could be barley, it could be corn, whatever is relevant to that particular community. This is the default rule. However, we do have a lot of evidences. For example, one of the tabi'een, one of the successors actually mentioned clearly in an authentic narration that during his lifetime, which is the generation after the companions, that they used to collect zakatul mal in cash and not in kind. The madhab of Abu Hanifah al-Nu'man radiyallahu anhu wa rahimahullah is the permissibility of paying zakatul al-fitr in cash if it is more beneficial for the needy individuals or the zakat recipients. It is the madhab of Umar ibn Abdul Aziz radiallahu anhu, who used to ask his governors and his employees to collect zakat al-mal in cash. So to answer the question, yes, you can pay zakat al-fitr in cash instead of in kind. And another relevant question, can I prepay zakat al-fitr? The answer is yes, you can pay it as early as the beginning of Ramadan. You can pay zakat al-fitr as early as the beginning of Ramadan. Usually we hold it until the last few days before the end of Ramadan or before Eid. However, again, it's up to your own discretion. If you find out that there is a benefit out of prepaying zakat al-fitr, you can definitely pay it in cash, and you can definitely pay it as early as the beginning of Ramadan. We do have one opinion that you can prepay zakat al-fitr even before the beginning of Ramadan, which means nowadays. However, this is, I would say, not the most popular opinion. The mainstream is that by the beginning of Ramadan, you are safe enough to pay zakat al-fitr. For this year, it should be around $10. You need to pay it on behalf of yourself and your spouse, if you are the husband, and your kids, the minors amongst them, and any individual that is dependent on you. Okay, all of your dependents. If you have like other family members whom they are like sponsored in full by you, then you have definitely to pay zakat al-fitr on their behalf. Having said that, just a very brief introduction to zakatul mal. What is to be included and what is to be excluded from zakatul al-mal? I'm not talking about zakatul fitr now. I'm talking about zakatul mal that we usually pay it in the month of Ramadan. Number one, all the cash money that you have, whether that cash money is for consumption purposes, for investment purposes, for saving purposes, for Hajj, for marriage, for building a house, for the education of your kids, whether that money is documented, or not documented, whether it has been charged zakat al-mal for the last year or last years or not, it does not make any difference. All the cash money that you have an access to, whether cash in your pocket, whether with your wife, whether in your checking account, whether in your saving account, okay, as long as you have an access to that money, then actually it is to be included and not to be excluded. When it comes to cash money, there are a lot of categories who are very, very similar or takes the same rule of the cash money. For example, if you do have any investment, in the stock market, that investment could be like a mutual fund account, could be individual retirement account, could be brokerage account, could be simple investment account, could be annuity, could be 401k, could be 403, could be a pension plan, could be 529 for the education of your kids. Whatever the platform, whatever the account might be, there is actually a well-established rule here that we need to comprehend, which is whatever is accessible from all these different options is zakatable. Whatever is accessible is zakatable. Let's take the most popular example, which is the 401k, which is an employer-based retirement account. You might say, I do not have an access to my 401k. This is inaccurate. You do have an access to a certain percentage of your 401k. There's something called a humanitarian case or hardship. If you apply in the month of Ramadan for a hardship case, for a humanitarian case to your investment company, Fidelity or Vanguard, whatever the company might be, based on the policy of your employer, based on the policy of the investment company, you will be having an access to a certain percentage of your account. Let's say, for example, just to keep it simple, that the total amount or the face value, if you wish, if your 401k for this year by the beginning of the month of Ramadan was $100,000, $100,000, and Fidelity allows you to withdraw up to 50% of your 401k for whatever humanitarian case might be or hardship. So the withdrawable amount or the accessible amount in this particular example is $50,000. Okay. Now, bear in mind that you do not have to actually physically withdraw the money. It's just a hypothetical math that you do to find out or to figure out how much zakah you have to pay for this year. So the accessible amount is 50,000. If you decide to proceed, those $50,000 will not be take home 50,000. You will be charged penalty, interest, processing fees, whatever, tax maybe. So let's say that the total deduction from those 50,000 is 10,000, just to keep it simple, right? So the net amount, take home amount is $40,000. If you want to be generous, then you pay zakah on those $40,000 based on 2.5% zakat rate. Or if you decide to pay zakatul mal toward the end of the year, like in the month of December, then you need to consider paying zakah based on 2.575%, based on 2.575% to accommodate the 10 extra days difference between the lunar calendar versus the Gregorian calendar. If you decide to, as I said, if you want to be generous, then you pay in the month of Ramadan, you pay zakatul mal on those, $40,000 based on 2.5% zakah rate. If you want to go with the book, as they say, you do not want to pay any extra dollar as zakatul mal, definitely you do have the right to do so. You can deduct maybe, I would say, between 10 to 15% of those $40,000 as usulun thabita, or fixed assets, because those 40,000 represent stocks. Is that correct? And those stocks actually belong to companies. Not every single item in the company or asset or device or material or machinery is for sale, right? There are a category called fixed assets, like the furniture that they have, the devices, the tools, the softwares, the hardware, the security system, the machineries, the building that they have. Those fixed assets range between 10 to 15, 20%. Let's be very, very conservative and say that, okay, the net assets actually, the fixed assets are 10% only. So from those $40,000 in our example, you can exclude another 4,000. You're gonna end up with $36,000. That is the zakatable amount. You pay zakah on it based on 2.5%. Moving on, you might have your own practice, your own business. You might have a consultation firm. You could be, let's say, for example, a physician, an engineer, an attorney, a consultant, and an advisor who does have his own practice. And you do actually experience, customers sometimes on daily basis. And based on that, you receive money sometimes on daily basis. Every single day you have customers. Every single day you receive a payment. How to handle that cash flow that you experience in your account? Here is the answer. Do not worry about the cash flow that you experience throughout the whole year long. Whatever you receive, spend whatever you want and save the rest of it and just move on. Do not even think about paying zakatul mal. Okay, let me give you just a very simple example. You work as a physician, you have your own office, you have your own practice, okay? And this is the only source of income. This is your career. This is your exclusive source of income. So yesterday you received $5,000. Today you received $0 because today is Sunday. Tomorrow you will be receiving another 3,000. The day after tomorrow, 500. Forget about all this cash flow. Do not even think about it, right? Just make sure that you deposit all this money that you receive throughout the whole year long in one checking account, so to keep everything trackable. Okay. In the month of Ramadan, if the threshold or the nisab or the minimum amount of money is already accumulated, okay, what is the nisab? The nisab is 85 grams of gold. 85 grams of gold. Nowadays, if the gram of gold is around $50, okay, and when I say a gram of gold, I mean the 24 karat, like the pure gold, 24 karat. So simple math, 85 times 50, that is $4,250, I think. I mean, I'm just speaking from my memory, which means that if you already accumulated $4,250 or more in your checking account coming from that business, then this is actually an nisab. This is a threshold or a minimum amount that you already matched, and consequently you have to pay zakatul mal. Back to our example, you work as a physician, and in the month of Ramadan, you checked your checking account, you found out that you have $74,000. That is way, way above the nisab. Okay, if you do have any receivables, like amounts that you expect to receive from your customers, from your patients, forget about the receivables. Do not pay zakah on them until you receive them. Whatever is receivable for this year will be already received for the next year. So forget about the receivables. If you do have payables, payables means amounts of money that you have to pay to others. Could be vendors, could be wholesalers, could be lenders, could be whatever the case might be. Whatever is due among those payables that you have to pay as soon as possible, and that amount is due, you can put it aside. You can put it aside. I want to just to keep following up with me. I said you work as a physician, and you found out in the beginning of the month of Ramadan you have $74,000 cash stored in your checking account, right? Okay. You have your mortgage payment due, $2,000. Put it aside, okay? And you have some other payments to vendors and to wholesalers, okay, who will send you some medicines or some equipment, $5,000. Put them aside. And then you found out that you have your car payment, $500. Put it aside. Appliances payment. Put it aside. And then you need to have another maybe $4,000 to $5,000 for your own personal expenses. Okay, for the food, for the groceries, for the transportation, for the healthcare, for your family members. Put them aside. The net amount actually is the zakatable one. Net amount is the zakatable amount. What is to be included in zakatul mal? The business that you have. The business that you have. Business actually is a very wide term. Okay, business is a very wide term. It includes a lot of scenarios and a various scenarios under it. Let's say, for example, that you have a car dealership. You have a car dealership. Okay, in the beginning of the month of Ramadan, find out exactly how many cars are parking in your lot for sale, right? All those cars who are for sale, available for customers, are zakatable. Anything else, the building, the parking lot, equipment, the computers, the furniture, any tools, anything that you use to run your business is to be excluded and not to be included. All the merchandise, all the commodities, all the goods, whether they are display items or actual items on the shelves, or they are inventory, everything actually is to be included and not excluded. In our example, you have a car dealership, and the only commodity that you offer for sale is cars. Now, how to determine the value of your business, or how to calculate your zakah? Some people actually go with the invoice value. Invoice value means how much they paid to get those cars, and this is not an accurate way of paying zakatul mal, because the market value of the cars that you have in your lot in the beginning of the month of Ramadan might be equivalent, might be more, might be less than the invoice value. So do not go with how much you paid to buy those cars. This is an inaccurate method of calculating your zakah. Some people actually go with the retail value. Retail value means that they are asking for $150,000, okay, to sell all those cars that they have in their lot in the zakat due date. Do not pay zakat on 150 because this is actually the listing price, but you did not get it yet. You might sell those cars for 150, you might sell them for more, you might sell them for less. So this is an inaccurate way of calculating your zakat. You need to go with something called wholesale value or wholesale market value. Wholesale market value means if you do not have all these cars on your lot in the zakat due date, how much you are willing to pay the auction, okay, in that particular day, to pay the auction to buy all these cars. If the amount is $94,000, then you need to pay zakat on the $94,000. So again, to make it simple, do not go with the invoice value, do not go with the retail value, go with the wholesale market value. The wholesale market value. How about the jewelry that your wife or your daughters might have? The jewelry that are for personal use, jewelry for personal use, as well as within the average that other females, other women have in that particular society, that particular era, are zakat exempt. Okay, let's say that the average Nigerian sister lives in like living in Houston, have between $10,000 to $15,000 worth of jewelry. If that is the case, then up to $15,000 worth of jewelry are zakat exempt, as long as those jewelry are for the personal use of that sister, as long as they are within the average. Okay. What if there is any profit factor behind buying the jewelry? I know some families who are who are in the habit of watching the price, okay, in the market. Whenever the gold or the jewelry price goes up, they sell what they have. Whenever the price goes down, they go ahead and just buy. So they buy gold and jewelry for business purposes, okay, for profit purposes. If that is the case, then all the jewelry that your wife and yourself might have for business, for profit purposes are zakatable. How about the long-term investment that you might have? Long-term investment like what? Like you bought a piece of land back in Nigeria 10-15 years ago, okay, and your plan at that time is to save it as a long-term investment. It was not for sale, and today it's not for sale. You just bought it, okay, with the intention of just waiting 10-15-20 years until your kids finish their high school. Whenever they want to go to college, you will be having some assets for them to liquidate, to sell, and to spend on them. As long as that piece of land, whether in the US or overseas, is not in the market, it's not for sale, then it is zakat exempt. It is zakat exempt. It's not actually zakatable. Once you change your mind and you put that piece of land in the market active, and you hire someone as an agent for that land, and it is clearly for sale in the market, then it becomes zakatable. From that time on, every single year you need to pay zakat on it, whether it is sold or not. It doesn't make any difference, because that piece of land became a commodity, became a merchandise. It's something actually for sale, so you need to pay zakat al-mal on it. What if your business is real estate? Oh, real estate actually has two different scenarios. You might have rental properties. You just buy condominiums, apartments, houses, and you rent them. That's your business. If that is the case, do not pay zakat on the market value of the real estate that you have, okay, the apartments, the condominiums, the houses, the shelters that you have that you offer for rent. Do not pay zakat on their market value, because they are not for sale. You need to pay zakat on the lease revenue. How much money you generated out of renting or leasing those properties, that is actually the zakatable part. Of course, you need to deduct all the expenses that you incurred. For example, maintenance, tax, insurance. Some of the tenants did not pay you in time. Whatever actually stayed in your possession until all the way until the zakat due date is to be included. If you have only one condominium, okay, and you rent it for $1,000 per month, and whenever you receive your check 1,000, you spend it on the spot. Toward the end of the year, in the beginning of Ramadan, you ended up having $0 from those $12,000. Whatever you receive, you spend. Whatever you receive, you spend. There is no saving coming from that apartment. If that is the case, then definitely there is no money to worry about calculating it as zakah. Bear in mind that zakah is to be calculated based on the remaining income, not based on the total income, which means that whenever you file for your tax, like what we do nowadays, when you file for your tax to the IRS, you start your math with the total amount, with the total income that you have made in 2019, right? If you made 100,000 in 2019, you report to the IRS supposedly $100,000, and then you start benefiting from the different deductions. If you have tuition fees for your kids, that is tax deductible. If you have mortgage, that's tax deductible. If you made donation, tax deductible. If you have health insurance, and on and on. This is how we calculate and pay, our tax to the IRS. When it comes to zakatul mal, it's different story. Zakatul mal, we do not go with the total amount that you have made in 2019. We go with the remaining income. You made $100,000 in 2019. How much is the leftover? Okay, is the reserve, is the saving, is the amount that is still in your checking account or at your house or in your pocket from those $100,000. You have only 5,000. That 5,000 actually is the zakatable one. Whatever else that you have received and spent actually is not to worry about, because if there is no money, there is no reason behind calculating your zakat. This is actually what I mean by zakat al-mal is to be calculated based on the remaining income, not based on the total income. Is paying tax to the government, to the IRS, sufficient enough? Okay, can it serve as a substitute of paying zakat al-mal? The answer is absolutely no. You have to pay tax to the government, and you have to pay zakat al-mal. You pay zakat al-mal as a Muslim, whether you live in the US or you live somewhere else, and you pay tax to the government because you live in the US, whether you are a Muslim or a Christian or a Jewish or an atheist or a Sikh, whatever your religion, or non-religious individual, whatever your religion might be, it does not make any difference. Okay, expenditures wise, the way that our tax money is spent does not match the 8 different categories that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned as the 8 eligible zakah recipients. إنما الصدقات للفقراء والمساكين والعاملين عليها. So our tax money is the money that we pay, and directly or indirectly we benefit from that money. When it comes to zakatul mal, you cannot be a zakat payer and a zakat recipient at the same time. You cannot pay zakatul mal and then you benefit from zakatul mal. You are either a zakat payer or a zakat recipient, or a neutral. You are not rich enough, you do not have nisab to pay zakat al-mal, but you are not needy enough to be an eligible zakat recipient. So you are neither zakat payer nor a zakat recipient. But when it comes to tax that you pay to the government or to the state, you are a zakat payer, and you are a taxpayer, and you are a beneficiary from the tax money. That's why the expenditure and the system of zakat al-mal is way different from paying tax to the government. However, your tax is zakat deductible, and your zakah is tax deductible. Your zakah is tax deductible if you decide to pay zakat al-mal to Masjid-ul Mumineen, for example, to support your community and your masjid. Whatever you pay, actually, you will be benefiting. I mean, you can file to the IRS and just make some, tax deduction. As well as your tax is zakah deductible, which means that if you do have $20,000 in the beginning of Ramadan, okay, but you still owe the IRS $5,000 due amount. You can put this $5,000 aside, and you just calculate your zakah based on the $15,000. As I said in the beginning, this is a very lengthy topic, very, very long and lengthy and detailed topic. Whatever I presented here briefly is just a kind of like an appetizer for the topic, if you wish, or just brainstorming, to get some questions and some feedback from you. I can go over and over, but I think what I presented here is enough to start a discussion with you if you do have any comment or question. I wish we have an MC here who can just run the the conversation, the question and answer session.
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh. Jazakallah khairan for the beautiful presentation. Yeah. May Almighty Allah reward you abundantly. I remember, I think about 10 years ago or more than that, you came to Masjid-ul Mumineen and you presented a very beautiful presentation for us on zakat. If I remember very well, the slides you presented that time might be up to like 60 or 70 pages. So Jazakallah khairan. So I just have some questions related to zakat. But before I go to that, I have two questions that are related. With the COVID-19 going on now, and I think this has to do with fiqh of Ramadan. So with the infection going on now, with lockdown, so we have two questions that are related. Can I have the intention of doing i'tikaf in my house the last 10 days and still get the same reward as if I do i'tikaf at the masjid?
The mainstream fatwa is that i'tikaf is to be conducted in a masjid, not any masjid, in a masjid that is fully designated for salah, because we do have some corners, some musallayat. Sometimes even in the office you have a corner that is well known to be like a musalla. This is not counted as a masjid because it is not fully designated for the whole community to stop by at any time and pray. So this is a kind of private masjid. Even in our houses, some of us, especially if your house is a spacious one, you might have a room or a certain corner that is musalla. Technically speaking, this is not a masjid because it's not available for the public, accessible to the public. However, the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is way more than what we think. In a very authentic hadith, the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam had mentioned clearly that if someone used to have the habit of going to the masajid or performing ibadah, including of course i'tikaf, and he has been deprived or unable or prevented from committing it, he will be getting the reward as if he is still doing it. So if your practice in the last few years is that every single Ramadan in the last 10 days you stay in the masjid and you are like so eager and you already had in mind that if the masjid is available, I'm going to do it for this year, inshallah, with the grace, with the mercy, with the help, with the generosity of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you will be getting your reward 100%, even though you are staying at home. Now, technically speaking, is you're staying at home counted as i'tikaf? The answer is no, it is not i'tikaf, but the reward inshallah is there.
Jazakallah khairan, Sheikh, for that response. I have another question on zakat. Somebody is putting a picture here. It says, I earn 100,000 per annum, and I usually wait for the month of Ramadan to pay the due zakat from my salary. But with the lockdown now, my job has asked me to stay at home. Salary is not coming in again. And even the little saving I'm hoping to spend on zakat, I have spent it. Now, President Trump wants to give stimulus for myself, my wife, and 4 kids. Do you advise that I use part of this stimulus to pay zakat in Ramadan, or I should spend it for my family welfare, or I should spend it for my community expenses?
It has to be taken case by case basis. It depends on the level of well-being and level of richness of that particular inquirer or individual. If someone actually is well off, he or she does have thousands of dollars, and he knows for a fact that even if there is no salary, even if there is no income for the next 1 or 2 years, he is absolutely fine. He has a lot of saving, a lot of investment, a lot of, different sources of income. For that individual, he has to pay zakat al-mal on time. But if someone lives check by check, like myself, okay, I know for a fact that because there is no payment for the month of March, and most probably there will be no payment for the month of April because of the pandemic, I do have the excuse actually of holding zakat al-mal, because I'm almost positive that I will be in need for the zakat al-mal to spend on myself. And the second fatwa I just shared with you here in the beginning of the presentation, that Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu did allow the zakah payers at a certain year to hold on their zakah, not to pay it. So if that person actually is in need for his money, then I would recommend that he should keep his money for himself, with the intention, with the plan that next year, inshallah, I'm going to be paying the zakah of this year and the next year.
Jazakallah khairan, Sheikh. I have something related to that, and I want you to just clarify on it. Somebody is asking that I have been keeping my savings, and alhamdulillah, I'm still having my job. And out of this savings, I have 10,000 to spend on my mom to go on Hajj later on in the year, if time permits, and if the condition is okay. Am I supposed to pay zakat even from that 10,000 that I'm keeping for my mom to go on Hajj?
Yes, any cash money that you possess, that you own, accessible, owned by you, is zakatable. Even if you are saving that money for marriage, if you are still single, or for Hajj, or for building a house, or for buying a car, or for the education of your kids, regardless of the reason behind holding the money, for investment purposes, for saving purposes, for consumption purposes, all the cash money and whatever is equivalent to cash money is zakatable. Even if you have paid zakah on that particular amount, 10,000 last year, it is zakatable annually. Every single year, you still have to pay zakah 2.5%.
Jazakallah khairan, Sheikh. I still have something that is related. I think during one of the questions that you answered, somebody didn't understand it very well. So the person is asking again, what about if one has a property that is not put in the market for sale or for rent? Is that property zakatable? Can I pay zakat on that property?
No, if it is not active in the market, for sale, it is zakah exempt. If it is active in the market for rent, not for sale, for rent, it is zakah exempt, because if it is a rental property, then you have to pay zakah on the lease revenue whenever you have lease revenue. If it is empty, unoccupied, then it is zakah exempt.
Jazakallah khairan. I think somebody wants to ask the question online. Brother Shakir, please unmute the person to ask that question online.
So, Brother Olatunji Raji was raising the hand. I want to unmute him. I don't know if he's still there to want to ask his question.
You go.
Brother Raji,
Yes.
go ahead now, ask your question. You can't hear you. Your signal is okay. Dr. Rashid, maybe.
Okay, yes. While we are still waiting for the brother to come on, I have two questions that I want the Sheikh to answer together. I know you mentioned it before in one of the questions that you responded to. Zakat on shares and stocks. How do we go about it? And that person linked it to, so money in your 401k or any other money that you keep till retirement. Do you still have to pay zakat on those on such funds?
Investments in the stock market are not the same. Some of them are accessible in full, like if you have a simple investment account, or you have a brokerage account, or you have 529 for the education of your kids, or you have individual retirement account. All these different accounts are accessible in full. So if that is the case, then they are zakatable in full, which means that you start making your calculation or zakah calculation based on the full amount that you have, because all what you have actually is accessible. You have $10,000 in your brokerage account, you pay zakah on the 10,000, minus any like fees, any tax, any penalty that you will be charged if you decide to withdraw the money, minus 10 to 15% fixed assets, and the net amount actually is zakatable based on 2.5%. If you work for the state or the county or the city or the government, federal government, and you do not have 401k, you have a pension plan. To my knowledge, pension plan is inaccessible. You cannot even apply for humanitarian case or hardship. If that is accurate and you do not have any access to your pension plan, then it is zakah exempt. You wait until the age of retirement, or Allah forbids, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give you long life, something happened to you, you became handicapped, you do have an access to your account, or something happened and you passed away, then definitely whenever your family members, your legal heirs have an access to your account, then they have to consider paying zakatul mal. But as long as it is not accessible during your lifetime, then they are not zakatable. The ruling here is that whatever is accessible is zakatable. Now,
Jazakallah khairan, Sheikh. I have another question here. I'm a young person and I finished school about 4 years ago, and ever since then I have been working. I have a good job, mashallah. I earn average of 85,000 every year, and at the end of the year I discovered that I have about 15,000 in savings that I don't touch. But because I'm not aware about zakat, I live in an environment where I don't even know where to pay my zakat to. So what is your advice? Do I start paying zakat as from this year, or I have to go back to those number of years that I've started working and look at the minimum savings I've had from that time up till now, if it enters nisab, and start paying zakat on them?
Well, I'm just afraid that ignorance here might not be a legitimate excuse. Alhamdulillah, yes, despite the fact that we live in a non-Muslim society, but we do have a lot of imams and people of knowledge and muftiin. So I mean, had you asked this question before, you'd have been able to know the answer. So I would highly recommend that you backdate your zakah calculation, and you start paying zakah from the very first year that you get that job. If you think that is too much and you want to start from this year, you might be excused. But my recommendation again is to backdate your zakah payment and zakah calculation since the first year you got a job, because I mean zakah is one of the pillars of Islam, and in most cases it doesn't make any sense that someone does not know that he or she has to pay zakah. Zakah, mentioned in the Quran 80 plus times with the salah. In the same way that we pray, salah 5 times daily, we have to pay zakatul mal. So like short answer, backdate your zakah calculation. You don't have to pay all the zakah on the spot today, but at least make a proper arrangement, to pay your zakah since the first year you got that job. Allah.
Jazakallah khairan, Sheikh. We are rounding up with our questions. So I just have 2 questions to put together. So one of them is, I have some land that I've invested some money on the land. Nothing is built on it as we speak. Do I have to pay zakat on that land? That is on one side. The other question is, we have a number of our community members now that have lost their jobs. So can we look for people who wants to pay zakat to other places and look for those individuals in our communities and give our zakat to them because they have lost their jobs and they are in need of some of our support?
Wallahi, as a masjid leadership or administration, this is the best you can do, is to track those who want to pay zakat al-mal from within your community, and to track those who lost their jobs and they are financially struggling. So you arrange for collecting zakat al-mal from the zakah payers, and to distribute that money as needed for those who have lost their jobs. I'm not sure if here's the question. I'm sorry.
Yes, I think you did. So how about the first part that says, if I have some landed property that I've put some money on, there's nothing built on that land up to date, do I have to be paying zakat on that land property?
As I said, I mean, if the land is for sale, then it is zakatable. If it is not for sale, then it is not zakatable. If the land is for rent, then it is not zakatable. Until it is rented or leased, then whatever lease revenue is zakatable. Now, the fact that you already paid for that land, or you did not pay for it, okay, there is a mortgage, like a lien. It doesn't make it if you bought a land that's worth $1 million, for example, and you paid down payment only $10,000. Now the land is under your name. Of course, there is a lien on it. Okay, the deed of trust is held by the title company because you did not pay in full. Well, the fact that you did not pay in full does not mean that you are not the owner. You are still the owner, but you owe the landlord the outstanding balance, and thus your land, if it is for sale, it is zakatable. If it is for your personal use, it is zakat exempt. If it is for rent, then you need to wait until you rent it and you make some money, then you pay zakat on the lease revenue.
Jazakallah khairan. I can see many people are still showing signs to ask their questions online because we have limited time. In about 5 minutes, we're going to round up. If you can still type in the questions, inshallah, we'll try to ask our sheikh before he goes away. He has to leave this meeting before or by 2 o'clock. So please, if you can still send in your question, we'll try to send them to sheikh. So I know you mentioned during your response, sheikh, that these are the recipients that can receive zakat. Somebody just want to be reminded who are the recipients of zakat, and in addition to that, student loan. If I have student loan to pay, which one comes first? Do I take care of the student loan first, or I should take care of zakat first?
Well, the zakat recipients, first of all, are al-fuqara wal-masakin, okay? The poor and the needy individuals, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala started with them for a purpose. So the Muslim community at large has to pay attention to the well-being of its community members before considering anything else. Now, do the masajid recipients, and I think some having their microphone on. Would you please mute it to avoid any echo? Thank you. Can you pay zakat al-mal to your Masjid-ul Mumineen, for maintenance, for operation, for expansion? The answer is yes. Under the category fi sabilillah, you can confidently pay your zakat al-mal to your masjid. When it comes to a student loan, if there is a part of that student loan is due, then it is actually zakat deductible. You put it aside, you pay it, and then the rest of the money that you have, actually you pay zakat on it, because whatever is due is to be deducted. As I said in the presentation, all the payables, the due amongst them are to be deducted. If there is a long-term payment plan, for example, you have a mortgage for the next 20 years, you cannot deduct 20 years mortgage payment because it's not due. Whatever is due for the month of Ramadan is deductible. Whatever is not due is not to be deducted.
Jazakallah khairan, Sheikh. Just last question, and I think it's more of clarification because you already mentioned those people that are the recipient of zakat. But somebody wants to know, for kids attending private schools, secular Islamic schools, and the parents are poor, they cannot afford it, and we pay zakat to take care of the school fees for those kids that attend such schools?
Well, education nowadays is among the necessities that all people need, whether those kids or children go to Islamic school or public school. They have to be sponsored by their parents. If their parents are not well off enough to cover the expenses of their kids who go to Islamic school or public school, then the parents themselves actually are eligible zakat recipients. And based on that, of course, I'm talking about Muslim community. Then based on that, a zakat payer can definitely give his or her zakat to those parents who have kids and who are struggling in securing, their tuition fees or covering their expenses to attend the school and to get their proper education.
Jazakallah khairan, Sheikh. I know Brother Shakir will take the floor now, and Dr. Abidogun is around the corner for the closing dua. But we really want to thank our Sheikh for coming on board. We have really enjoyed your presentation from time to time. We pray to Almighty Allah to reward you and accept the time you spent with us as an act of ibadah. as we are going through this pandemic, we know, you have already prayed for us. Please still remember all the Muslim Ummah in your dua. We know it's only dua that can really save us at this time. And as we are approaching the month of Ramadan, we pray for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us mercy and protect us as we go through this pandemic. And for those who have participated, we say Jazakallah khairan for your time you have spent with us.